Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast, with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Miracle Friday. Today we're going to have a special little show because we've asked people to write in fascinating coincidences. You know what a coincidence is legitimately? A coincidence.
Two incidences that coincide.
Yes, but I wanted to hear Merriam-Webster's definition, which is a concurrence of events or circumstances without apparent causal connection. Mm-hmm. Okay, the coincidence of interest. Okay, yeah. So anyway, when something happens weird, here's a simple one. Here's the simplest one. I could tell you it happened yesterday because we were trying to pick what a Krishna miracle was. So I was coming back from Lev's house. And me and Justin were in the car, and we passed Chris McMahon. He's an old-time Zoomer, an old-time other. And I told the story about how Chris McMahon was chanting at Super Soul Farm one day. And it was like a whole interesting story. He was fearful of his life and because he was going through some physical health issues. But anyway, to make a long story short.
Is that the story where you were like, it was like winter and you thought someone was that was a great story.
It's a great story.
You should tell it.
But the miracle in that story is that's a whole different story. It's not a Krishna miracle. It's just a cool story. But then when I got back, and I haven't talked about Chris McMahon in a long time. I got in my house and checked my phone. Chris McMahon had texted me. Like that's a Krishna miracle.
That's a Krishna
miracle.
Well, did he see you on the road? Is that why he like?
No.
Oh, I saw Raghunath drive by, so I texted him.
It was just random. That's a random coincidence.
I'm trying to say, is there some causality there? Are you sure?
There was no causality. I mean, could have. I doubt that.
Sorry to.
You're trying to ruin my miracle.
Trying to ruin your miracle. But there's causality right there.
You're like the causality catcher. There's no such thing as miracles. You just played the damn song, the miracle song. It's a miracle. So what we're going to do today is we're going to read some miracles. And it might take up the whole show. We might just go to the Bhagavatam and say we've had enough of these miracles. But
I mean, we could easily go the whole show because there's like a ton of them. And
there's a ton of people's writing their miracles, and I really appreciate that. And it's how things magically. And I got Justin here. Justin, come here. Before he does anything, I got to just introduce Justin because Justin had a miracle I thought was a miracle. I'm just going to ask Justin.
Let's see if we can find some causality in this miracle.
Don't make this into a novel here. Just tell us the
simple make this into a novel, kid. Just tell us the miracle. Move on.
So I was like 14 years old, and I'm walking on the beach with this woman who was like a spiritual mentor of mine, and we were talking about God, and I was like, well, what if God actually doesn't really exist? Like, what if there's actually nothing out there? And I looked down on the beach and I saw this bottle cap and it had words on it, and I pick up the bottle cap and the bottle cap said, "You better believe it."
That's a miracle.
That's a Krishna miracle. Thank you.
It's a Krishna miracle.
Thank you, Justin. You better believe.
That reminds me of the Irish Krishna miracle. Maybe we could read that one. You know the one I'm talking about?
Well, we're going to have some honorable mentions today.
Yeah.
And I want to say that we're not going to be able to read them all, but I really appreciate people's Krishna miracles that
Me
they
too.
sent in.
I had a great time reading them.
It doesn't mean that you didn't.
That yours wasn't a miracle.
Yeah, it doesn't mean yours isn't a miracle just because you don't read it. Mara, I'm just curious, Mara, any Krishna miracles in your life happening or happened? Can you remember?
Yeah, you know what comes to mind is the first time I went to Mumbai, I flew there by myself and got in really, really late. It was like 3 a.m. or something. And I had all this trouble finding a cab from the airport to the temple where I was coming to meet you guys in Mogaji. And I was sitting in the back.
Hold it. We didn't take care of you, like get you a ride to the airport or something.
Whoops. Just left you at the
First time in
airport.
India, and you're just trying to figure it out on your own.
So I was sitting in the back of the cab chanting japa because I was like, where am I? How am I going to find this place? And like in the middle of the night, it's really, and you've never been there before, it's really hard to see where the temple is.
It's intimidating too.
Yeah. And on top of that, like the cab drivers didn't know whether I was going, they were like, are you going to Juhu or Chowpatty?
And you didn't know.
And I didn't know. And nobody's answering their phone when I'm trying to like send a message. And so we get there and it's okay. We get there and we get close, and Bridge, Raghu's wife, who's like, 6 feet tall with like red hair, is standing in the middle of the road outside of the temple.
That's
like
a
when
miracle.
the cab goes to drive by. Yeah. With Rooney. I think she was holding Rooney. Yeah.
You would have never found it. That's a Krishna miracle.
Yeah, I thought so.
We'll give you that.
Mara's miracle.
Thanks.
Kaustubha, you have any Krishna miracles in your own life? Like,
Oh boy, I should have thought. I've just been focused on everyone else's miracle.
Mm-hmm.
You're the miracle in my life, Raghunath.
All right, no.
Every day is a miracle with you.
If I tell my Krishna miracle, no one's going to even believe it. You know what I mean?
Hear it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, it was that one about how I got that apartment. That was a Krishna miracle.
Oh yeah, that was.
That's a good one.
All right, this is like the all-time. I'm going to get the Japamalas, the prize. If you're new to this thing, we're doing.
It doesn't work that way, Raghunath.
I win.
I win both prizes, actually.
But when I tell this miracle, everybody will bow down and say, "That's the Krishna miracle we've been waiting for," but because it is.
Because there's no causality. You couldn't find any causality in this miracle.
I saw Radharamana Swami's will in it. I saw
Yeah,
Radharamana
well,
Swami's
that's
will. By the way, if you're
miraculous.
listening to the show for the first time, for the last week we've been culminating fascinating spiritual coincidences, and we've been talking about them, and people have been writing them in. And if you win, we have a first and second prize for silver by our friend from Silver Tulsi Mala, which is tulasimala.com. If you go there, he makes the best malas. All the other malas we find break, so we use these malas like these ones I'm wearing here. And check it out. If you like them, just you can order and put Wisdom 108 and put in the disc. That's a discount code for 10% because he likes our show and what we're doing. So we like to work symbiotically with him. Anyway, when I first moved to New York, or when I first moved to upstate New York from LA, we went through a tough time financially. It was during that financial. I'll save all the details, but basically we were sort of like a little down and out because that 2007 real estate crash, we lost our house, we lost our cars and everything. And so we moved to upstate, and I finally sort of like, it's hard to reestablish yourself as a yoga teacher in New York or anywhere whenever you move, because I was already a popular yoga teacher. And then I moved to upstate New York and I had to like start over again. So I started teaching, and I was living at a friend's house with my 4 little children and my wife. And we were like literally exhausted, but I finally sort of like built up a following again and started to make a living, get back on my feet. And so out of exhaustion, me and my wife said, let's go to New York City and just to have some time alone. Her mother watched the kids. So my mom lives in Battery Park City, and we jogged up the West Side Highway. And when we jogged up to the West Village, there's a big building there. And I pointed to my wife. I said, you see that building? 17 years ago, I put my name on a waiting list for this building because in this building, it was purchased by a very wealthy artist so that artists could live in Manhattan for for inexpensive price. And my wife said, oh, really? You put your name on the waiting list? Are you still on the list? I said, I don't know. Let's jog in and see. So here we are jogging. We jog into this building. And
Westbeth.
I get to the front desk. Huh? I get into the front desk. I get to Westbeth, yeah. So I get into this building and I say, hi, my name's Ray Capo, and I'm on a 2-bedroom waiting list. And they said, I said, I'm looking for a lady named Cynthia. And she said, oh, Cynthia's in the office right now, but you can't go in there. You got to call her from my desk. I said, oh, you're kidding. So the same lady is still there for 17 years. That's not the miracle. Hold on. So I called up this lady, Cynthia, in the other room. I said, hi, Cynthia. I don't know if you remember me. My name's Ray Capo. I'm on a waiting list for this building. And she said to me, where are you? I said, well, and she sort of was like it sounded like she was angry. I said, well, I've been living in California for many years. And she said, I said, but now I live in upstate New York. But where am I actually right this moment? I'm right outside your door. And she goes, get in this office right now. And I was like, oh my God, did I do something wrong? She's like, spoke to me very harshly. And so, this, very American lady opens the door and she looked in my face and she goes, I'm not a spiritual person, but this is the most spiritual thing that's ever happened to me. And she grabbed me by the wrist and walked me to her computer. And she was writing me an email.
At that very
and
moment.
It said, basically, we have a loft apartment of Mr. Capo. We have a loft apartment available for you immediately if you want it. And I was like, what? She goes, nothing like this has ever happened to me. I highly recommend you take this apartment. I said,
it's a miracle.
I don't even, that's a Krishna miracle, man. Come on, Nara.
Okay, you get the beats. You get them all. That's it.
Give me the beats.
Show's over. We're going home.
No one's going to top that. No one's going to top that.
That's a tough one to top. That's a tough one to top.
But that being said, I should have saved that for last. But anyway.
Oh, because you're a miracle.
That's a Krishna miracle, man. That's a Krishna miracle.
That's good.
And it was right. I called up Radharamana Swami because I wasn't sure if it was Maya or Krishna. I was like, is this Maya's miracle? Maybe it's Maya trying to tempt me to the city because I've been living in LA. I don't want to live in the city anymore. And so then I called Radharamana Swami on the phone. I said, I don't know if this is a Krishna miracle or not, or if this is Maya's miracle. And he said, well, what he said 3 years ago, I was given a building in Manhattan. This is the Bhakti Center, but it's always been under litigation, but it will be officially ours January 1st. When do they want you to move in? And I said, December 1st. And he said, then that's Krishna's arrangement. And then me and my wife packed up everything. We moved to New York the next day.
The next day?
2 days later. 2 days later.
Wow.
How's that for a Krishna miracle?
That one gets the stamp of approval for me.
Okay.
That was
there was no coincidence. Anyway, that's yeah. Okay. Kaustubha, you got to top that one? You got any personal miracles in your life?
I don't have anything that can top that. But
don't say like life is a miracle. I don't want to hear that.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't have a miracle that can compete with your miracle. You win.
Give me the beads.
Give him the beads. But the miracle that always, blew my mind was the miracle you told about Varshana Maharaj. Remember that one?
That was pretty miraculous.
Why don't you go ahead and tell that, at least briefly?
Oh, I was with Varshana Maharaj. I don't know if
were you there when
him.
it happened, or he told you about it?
No, he told me about it.
Okay.
Although he Varshana Maharaj, he's like a miracle man. If you hang out with this guy, miracles just happen. He's one of these like animal whisperers. He can speak to animals.
Yeah.
And he lived at New Vrindavan, and oh man, it was just a weird story. He was talking about the horses. The horses. I don't want to. I'm not going to tell the story. I'm going to tell the story. But basically, he's a miracle man. You hang out with this guy, miracles happen, magic stuff happens. Like the whole trip down, I drove him to New Vrindavan, and he couldn't move. His body was physically incapacitated, and he was laying down in the back of an old station wagon. And the whole time, he's like, "I miss my horses." Because he had these connecting with these horses at the farm, and he was moved away from New Vrindavan. And I drove him back to go to a funeral of someone that he loved. and he was going to give the eulogy or something. And he just kept on saying, these horses, my horses, I miss my horses. I have to find my horses. I have to speak to them. They're my friends. And I tell you, on the road when we were waiting, there was like these horses waiting for, as if they were waiting for us on the way back. Sort of a miracle. They're sort of blocking the road. And he got out. There's a bigger one where he said, I need to get the horse's papers. The whole time he was talking about the horse's papers.
Yeah.
And no, I think I was there. I was there. The horse. No, I was with him. Yes, okay. He goes, I got to find the horse's papers. I've got to get and rescue these horses. We weren't sure what the fate of New Vrindavan was going to be. And he walked out. But the papers
were like lost a long time ago.
Papers
right?
were lost. And it means like who owns these horses. And he walked into. I dropped them off at the barn, and literally something fell from the rafters. From the rafters. And I said, what was that? And he goes, it's the horse's papers.
There you go.
That was the Krishna miracle. That was a Krishna miracle. But there's certain people you hang out with. Radha Swami's one of them. You hang out with him, it's like a miracle is happening all the time.
True.
I want to hear a Kaustubha miracle. All right, you think about it.
I came here to read other people's miracles today.
Okay, well, all right. If you have a miracle that pops up in your minds, maybe you're forgetting.
Are we building up to the winners, or are we?
Yeah, we'll build up to the winners. We'll build up to the winners. We're going to read honorable mentions first.
All right. I mean, there's so many that could be mentioned, but I'm just bringing this one up because you mentioned, because we had Justin read his miracle, which was kind of like, okay, God, if you're there, show me a sign, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is kind of like that. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
So this is from Vijaya Bateson from Ireland, and he writes, he calls this a Krishna 5-in-1 miracle. All right. He said, this is one of my first Krishna miracles, but still one of my favorites, because Krishna answered my call to see if he really existed. This activated one of my first serious steps in finding God in my life. The story will need to be condensed greatly to make it readable, but still maybe a little lengthy. It was early July 1984, and I was 17 years old. I decided to leave home as I was falling out with my family too often. Packed with a backpack on my back, my best friend and I set off hitchhiking across Ireland. We immaturely decided a really bad route to get to our final destination, and on that first night we got stuck in a really bad place. We were quite young and pretty much penniless, so we had limited options to get out of where we were. So we took a decision to walk through the night to get to an alternative route to hitch a lift. Okay?
Got it.
As friends, we were always talking about whether there was a God or not. I had met devotees years earlier and had learned to chant, so Krishna was in the equation in our chats. Anyway, we were walking and talking while it approached midnight. Suddenly a car stopped. We thought we had a lift, but it ended up being quite a troubled person trying to harm us. While we scared him off, he said he was going to get some friends and come back and kill us. It was quite a scary situation.
This is getting a little macabre.
Okay.
These are the darker Krishna miracles.
This is a dark miracle. We were desperate and feared for our lives, so we called on God. We were really unsure if we believed in God, but we thought we would make a plea. While my friend was more looking for the convenience of his requirements fulfilled, I was really looking for confirmation that God actually existed. So I suggested that if God could get us a lift to the next town, then that would be enough evidence that he existed. This was already quite a high ask, as we had been hitching and walking all day and had no lifts. Now it was past midnight, and rarely did a car pass on the very rural road. All right, so it's a real long shot.
Right. It's long, it's scary. You got someone who wants to kill you.
Yeah.
It's pitch black, it's late.
And they haven't been picked up all day, and now it's midnight. There's nobody out there. Who's going to pick them up now?
Jesus.
It's a Jesus miracle coming up. Okay, so he said, my friend said that this would not be big enough a challenge. So he made a series of demands listed below. Number 1, they would need a lift to the next town to get out of danger. It was highly unlikely, as it was midnight on a rural road. 2, the lift would have to go to the exact destination location. Then he added, not just the lift to the next town, but to the exact location we intended to finish our journey. The destination was hundreds of miles away in a remote part of West Ireland.
Okay.
All right, that got it tougher, right? Not only did they need a pickup on a rural road in the middle of the night, that pickup has to take them exactly where they're going. Okay, number 3, food. We were starving and had no means to get food as we were so deserted. So food also has to come. They need to get fed. Number 4,
these are demands they're putting on God to see if miracles happen.
Yeah, God's got to provide all these for us tonight.
It's like the power of intention here.
For warmth. My friend was really cold, so he wanted a coat or a big jumper. A jumper is like sweater over there, right?
Right.
We say sweater.
Jumper. Yeah.
So he wanted a coat or a big jumper to deal with a cold night. And then the 5th, accommodation or somewhere to sleep safely. This was quite a demand, as even if we got a lift straight away, it would be 3 or 4 a.m. when they would actually arrive there. So these are the 5 demands.
Right.
He finally agreed that if this all happened, then he would submit that there was a God in spite of being an atheist.
Pretty good. Okay.
All right. So out of fear, I prayed so hard and clarified our exact needs. Dear God, we need number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Internally, I even said to God that if he would just get us out of danger, that would be good enough for me. I chanted with such conviction and promised I would, in earnest, spend my life looking to find God if he simply gave a clear sign that he existed. It was a very sincere prayer for me. We were looking for immediate help, but I was also really looking for confirmation of God's existence through a kind of miracle.
Right.
Anyway, around 1 a.m. in the morning, a car pulled over, and the man agreed to give us a lift to the next town. We were delighted to be out of immediate danger. Okay, but that still doesn't fulfill nearly the needs for the miracle, right? But at least it got him out of the danger.
Yeah.
Because that guy could come back with his friends at any moment. As we traveled and spoke with the man, we told him of our story and what we had been through. Much to our surprise, he mentioned that the car behind him was his girlfriend, who actually happened to be driving to exactly the same area in West Ireland because she was going to teach Irish in a summer school out there.
Okay.
He said he would meet her in the next town and ask if she would give us a lift. Fortunately, she agreed, and much to our surprise, they brought us a load of food to feed.
Check number 2.
Check number 3, right?
Check number 3.
Check number 2.
Check number 2. The place, the food, what else?
And the pickup. So it was a pickup.
Okay.
It's going to go to the exact place where they need to go, and now
blanket.
The food's...
Did they have a blanket?
Well, let's see.
Okay.
So they're out of immediate danger. They got the lift. Okay, so she agreed. She's going to give them the lift. Fortunately, she agreed, and much to our surprise, they brought us some food to feed ourselves along the way. We couldn't believe it, but couldn't talk about our God conversation while in the car with a woman who was giving the lift. A few hours later, we arrived in the west of Ireland, exactly at the location we intended to go. As soon as we got out of the car, I said to my friend, "Can you believe this? Has God answered our prayers?"
This is a Krishna miracle. This is a Krishna miracle for sure.
To my surprise, the first thing he said was, "Well, I'm still cold, and I asked for something warm to wear." Without a single bit of exaggeration.
He's like Duryodhana. He's like Duryodhana. Like Krishna's showing his universal form, and he's, "I don't believe you. I still don't believe you."
Okay. So here it goes. He says, to my surprise, he said, "I need something warm." Without a single bit of exaggeration. At that very moment, he sat on a wall to get something from his bag. It was pitch dark, so you can't even see anything. And he sat straight on a woolen jumper. God just sent him the jumper he requested.
Krishna miracle.
That's number 4. All we needed was to find a place to stay. We had agreed to meet some friends down there who would have tents. But as it was dark, we could not confirm if it was them in the tents, so we slept in a shed. The next morning, we discovered the tents. We discovered the tents that we were at night were the right ones, but we had messed up. So Krishna had provided the tents, but we missed it. There you go. That was number 5, right? Although this is a simple story, It was the point by which I accepted there was a personal God who listened to our prayers, and from there I set about looking more actively. At many times over the years when I've had times of my faith shaken and I need to go back to the roots of where my belief started, I always remember this night, and my faith is reassured. Hare Krishna, your servant Vijaya Govindadas in Ireland.
You know what? I actually think it's important to read these miracles, refresh them, because if you write, no, you know why? Because these things are real, and we tend to like forget them over time. I've had so many miraculous things happen to me like that, and I feel like you got to almost write them down. So in times of weak faith, you go back to them and say, no, this is real. Okay. This stuff is all real. But by the way, off the top of my head, I just had this other great Krishna miracle thing that happened to one of our longtime listeners, Andrea Grossman, who's from the Super Soul Sacred Sangha. Do you remember Andrea Grossman? She came to went to India with me. Yeah. She's a little older than me, but she got into Bhakti. She went in pilgrimage, but then she really got into Bhakti, and she just like fell in love with Vrindavan and Krishna. It was one of those, like, you go on pilgrimage and everything shifts. And she had this major shift, I think, in her heart. And she said when she got home, she lived in an apartment in, I think, the Upper West Side. When she got home, she realized her whole life, not her whole life, but for most of her adult life, she had this big painting of Krishna and the gopis on her wall. And she never knew what it was. She just thought it was a cool piece of art. And thought that was pretty cool. What do you think about that?
It's a miracle. It's a miracle.
That's a Krishna miracle. Who's the one? Vivi had a cool Krishna miracle too.
Did you write it in?
I don't know if she wrote. She didn't write it in. She told me though. But Vivi came to Bologna. Vivi, she's on the show on the Zoom probably right now. Although, is she on? Yeah. Anyway, she said she came to. I gave a weekend workshop in Bologna, and she came down from Switzerland, and she got an Airbnb. And at the Airbnb in Bologna, out of all the Airbnbs, the Airbnb had all these pictures of Krishna in it. Come on, that's a Krishna miracle.
That's a Krishna miracle.
It's a Krishna miracle.
Unless it was in India.
Yeah, it wasn't in India. And she thought, well, maybe these devotees that we know, maybe it's their Airbnb or something, and they decorate it. And devotees were like, no, I have no idea who this is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Vivi said, it was in Bologna. I said that, Vivi. Okay. We should, yeah. Kathy Haggerty says we should do Krishna miracles once a month. Okay.
Maybe.
Let's
see how it goes. We're not done yet.
Yeah. Okay. I want to read Liam's as a runner-up.
Okay.
Or Mary, you want to read? Yeah. Mary, you want to read Liam's?
Sure.
Liam gets an honorable mention. Liam's he's an other, and he's a Zoomer. He's both. Him and his wife Jess.
But he's from the band. What is it? Dillinger's Escape Plan.
Dillinger Escape Plan. They were big. They were one of those bands that listened to Shelter, and then they got bigger than Shelter. It's like unfair.
Where's my miracle?
Nice, and he's a sweet devotee. Wonderful family.
Okay, so Liam wrote into us and he said, in September 2019, I was diagnosed with cancer and had to have a surgery to remove it. I wanted to be alone so I could meditate. He was doing transcendental meditation, and to simply listen to a playlist my wife had made me of some protection mantras while in the waiting areas. At this time, I was only barely scratching the surface of my bhakti practice and only superficially understood the bigger picture of yoga. I had attended a 6 Pillars workshop and had at most listened to 4 or 5 episodes of Super Soul Sacred Sangha, and otherwise wasn't listening to any lectures. So far as I was concerned, I wasn't familiar with any mantras besides Om. As I went under anesthesia, the Maha mantra from Satya Yuga, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, entered my mind and locked itself in a repeating loop and was still going as the drugs wore off hours later. I was perplexed as to what it was as my awareness returned, but felt like a ball of white light was surrounding me. When my wife came into the room to greet me post-op, I repeated the mantra to her and asked if it was one of the ones on the playlist, because it felt simultaneously familiar and yet so fresh. She didn't recognize it. And I double checked her playlist and it wasn't on there in any form. I searched Google, and once I got the spellings and syllables close enough, I was able to reverse engineer what it was. And consequently, I was completely blown away. I've been drawn towards that mantra, Vaishnavism and Krishna, and specifically the Bhagavatam ever since.
Yeah, because that's the invocation to the Bhagavatam.
That's a good one.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Yeah.
It was going through his mind. It's a Krishna miracle.
It came out
Liam.
of nowhere. That's a previous life thing right there.
That's a previous life thing, but you didn't win. But I love you. I love you. But you did win. We all win in Krishna miracles.
With your
Here's
miracle.
one from Chakri Das. I'm going to read Chakri
Chakri.
Das's. Chakri Das, great miracle.
He's like
You
an
didn't win.
all-time
but-
Prabhupada disciple.
I know Chakri because we used to stay at the St. Louis Temple. He's like he's an old brahmachari, Pujari. Anyway, he writes in
Go
Hare
way
Krishna,
back.
accept my obeisances, in St. Louis while doing Pujari work. Pujari means you're the priest taking care of the deity. I dropped a ghee lamp and I broke it beyond repair. The ghee lamp is where you put little ghee wicks, basically wicks soaked in ghee, and you light them on fire and you offer the flames to the ghee.
How do you break them, though?
You offer it to the deity. How do you break them? I don't know. You could drop it. They screw together sometimes.
Yeah.
So Chadaratma Prabhu was the temple president. He said, you should go home immediately and order a new ghee lamp from New York.
Okay.
I lived across the alley at the time. So I went home and dialed the number for the New York temple. And just at that moment, Divyanand Prabhu knocked on my back door and I said, come in. And I stopped my call. I hung up the phone. He had a big box in his hands that had just come in the mail. I opened the box and it was exactly the same style of ghee lamp I had just broken.
There you go.
It's a Krishna miracle. Chakri
It's a
Das. your servant.
miracle.
I'm honored that Chakri Das listens to the show.
Yeah, Chakri Das.
Actually, very sweet.
You know what I'm thinking is a miracle, Raghunath?
What?
This is a Wisdom of the Sages miracle. And a Raghunath miracle.
Let's hear.
Ultimately, it's a Krishna miracle.
Yeah. What?
So we all have our ups and downs in life and in our practice, and and our challenges and periods that we go through where we're more or less kind of connected. But probably since you got on the path of bhakti in the mid to late 80s, probably your toughest time was sometime toward the late 90s, right?
Yeah.
And you were living in Los Angeles. You weren't so much associating with the devotees at that time, at that period of your life.
Yeah. Let's just dig that up right now. What do you say?
Let's go. I want all the details about everything you did.
See what I call a list of my sinful behavior.
And so at that time, but that was a time where you got into jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
And so you were, and it was at that time that you were practicing with Joe Rogan, who wasn't like a big name at that point, right?
Yeah, he had a TV show, but it wasn't, he wasn't as big as he is now.
Right.
He was a comedian.
Okay, and then gradually you got more and more reconnected, and you picked up where you left off, and did so much wonderful service. But then decades later, you wanted to start, just like a morning kind of like sadhana, that you would do online for just a handful of people. And
Just a handful of yoga students.
A handful of yoga students, like 5 or 7 or something like that, right? And you asked me what you should do, and I was at that time reading Bhagavatam daily, so I said, oh, well, why don't you read Bhagavatam daily, And so you started doing that. And then after doing that for some months, you started inviting me on, and I was kind of like a guest host sometimes. And by, I don't know, a few months more down the road, I was doing it every day with you. And so that was, you started doing it, I think it was March of 99. And I think I was a regular by September of 99.
Yeah.
And then more and more people just started tuning in. So it went from like just that handful of people up to about like 80 or 85 people were tuning in on Zoom every morning.
Yeah.
And so then we decided, okay, let's go ahead and make this like an official podcast that we'll like release on, Apple Podcasts and all that. And we
starting June 1st, January 1st. Yeah.
So that was January 1st, 2000.
No, 2020.
I'm sorry, 2020. Yeah, 2020. Which was like about 20 years after you were doing your thing with Joe Rogan, right?
And basically have not even spoken to him that much since then.
Right.
A little bit. Yeah.
And so we got it started, and we started on the 1st of January 2020. And, we spent a few weeks just kind of doing it and getting the kinks out, kind of, working. And then I think it was probably just the end of January that we had a group of people, and we were staying in Jaipur, in a hotel in Jaipur.
Yeah.
I'm seeing Elizabeth and Daniel. They were there at that time, right?
Yeah.
And Mara was there at that time. And then it was one evening, I'm in bed. You come busting into the room, right? He said, I just got a text from Joe Rogan. He's asking me to be on his show, right? Right?
And that was unbelievable. That was a Krishna miracle, man.
Well, yeah, because
Krishna miracle.
This is why it was a Krishna miracle, because what happened was eventually, by you a month or so later, you were back in America. You're on his show, and then
he basically said, I was like, well, I'm in India right now, and he said, well, when can you do it? I said, well, I get home in a week. He goes, want to come out the following week? I said, well, I got to check my schedule. And he goes, I go, maybe. How about in like 2 weeks? He's like, okay, 2 weeks. We'll fly you out here. We'll figure it out. It's like,
right.
All right.
So, but it was because of that like as soon as you were on the Joe Rogan show, our listenership increased about 10 times. Right. It went into, we had about 900 people tuning in, and it shot up to like 10,000. Like right after you're on Joe Rogan's show.
It was a Christian miracle.
And so many of the people that we're connected with now that are part of our family, that are daily listeners, daily Zoomers, daily others, like so many people came through that. People that we don't know, but every day we're finding about new people, that said, oh yeah, I heard you on Joe Rogan and I've been listening. It's changed my life and all of that. It's so many people, literally thousands of people, right? But if
I remember when I left I left the Bhakti Center the other day, and I was falling asleep at the wheel driving upstate.
Yeah.
And I pulled over at Starbucks, and I said, I just ordered a cup of coffee, and the guy behind the counter just goes, "You're not Raghunath Capo, are you?" I said, and no one calls me. I said, "Yes, I am." And he goes, "I heard you on Joe Rogan just yesterday." Like people, they listen to back episodes, and he goes, "I'm really interested in spirituality." He goes, that show meant everything to me, and I bought a Bhagavad Gita now.
There you go.
Krishna miracle.
But in one sense, that's not such a super Krishna miracle, because
okay, all right.
Yeah, but this is my point, is that if Joe Rogan would have invited you like a month earlier, what to speak of a year earlier, 2 years earlier, whatever, then you wouldn't have had, there was no podcast to connect them to. No, but as soon as we got it up, and as soon as we
did it on Zoom, as we did it on Zoom, it was over, and that you couldn't watch back episodes.
Yeah, what to speak of if even it was before then, right? But it was just when, that's why I say Krishna's hand was in it. It's Krishna miracle, right? Just when we got set up, and there was there was something nice and daily for people to tune into. Just then, somehow in the heart of Joe Rogan, the Par Mama's in there and says, "Hey, what do they call it, Yoga Ray guy? We got to give him a call, invite him on the show." And then boom, I say that's a Christian
magic
miracle,
stuff, man. That's magic stuff.
That's a Christian miracle. It's only because of that so many of us are all connected right now.
Thank you, Bhakta Joe.
All right, I want to read a Christian miracle. This one's an honorable mention in my book.
Okay.
Just for the sheer mathematical impossibility of this one's a Christian miracle.
It makes Kaustubha a believer.
Yeah, it makes me a believer. I'm a believer. Okay, so this is from Trapped Down Under.
Laura Marco from Barcelona, but she's trapped in. She can't get out of Australia due to the pandemic. So we joke that she's in a metal band called Trapped Down Under. That's the joke about Laura Marco.
That's right. So she writes, "Hi Raghunath, Kaustubha, and Mara. I'm so grateful to be part of this amazing Bhakti community. So my Krishna miracle, it shocked me a lot when it happened, and I didn't know what was the meaning in that moment, but knew it was more than just a simple sign. She knew that she was meant to learn something. This was meant to change her life in some way, right? Here she says, I knew it was something much bigger, something divine. After finding Wisdom of the Sages and the Bhagavad Gita, I then knew that it was a Krishna miracle and was his call to take my spiritual path more serious and connect with you." Ready?
Hit me.
"So after a big decision of quitting my job after 3 years since I arrived in Australia, and feeling really confident to do it but scared, angry, and sad at the same time, and in a crisis with my husband, also wondering where life was taking me, and if I did the right decision, if I made the right decision by moving to Australia in the first place. That was her circumstance.
Wow.
I was feeling really bad the next 2 days, and I was crying a lot, but with a lot of anger. Trapped down under. That's why, right? You let it out. With a lot of anger because I had a big argument with my boss. I woke up after 2 days of that decision with the news everywhere on the internet and TV talking about 2 hurricanes that will happen at the same time near Miami and Cuba. And my sister sent me a message saying, Laura, did you watch the news? I didn't know that you had all that power to create 2 hurricanes at the same time with your name. And I was like, what do you mean? And then she sent me this. And she sent us the image, like the weather image, and it shows the 2 hurricanes, right? And so she's got visual evidence here. She said 2 hurricanes hitting at the same time. She said, imagine my face. I thought she was kidding. And then she thought she had done this on Photoshop. But the 2 hurricanes hitting at the same time, one with my name and the other with my surname. So it was Hurricane Laura and Hurricane Marco hitting at the same time, right? I was in shock. I knew it was a big sign, but it took me a week to get out of the shock. And then after that super good, confident focus and everything is going amazing and doing amazing connections with new and old friends like Sega, Daily Zoomer. Right?
She's friends with Sega.
Yeah,
Wow.
or Parmananda. After a few months of that and trying to find the meaning of that huge sign, Sega told me about Wisdom of the Sages and started yoga classes via Zoom with Parmananda. So I knew this was my path. Everything connected after 21 years of listening to Shelter and playing together with my band in 2000. In 2000, her band opened for your band, right? It's quite magic.
Yeah.
She says, thank you for this amazing podcast and for inspiring me with Shelter all these years. Everything makes sense now. XXX Laura Marco. That's a Christian miracle.
That's a Christian. How about Joe Cantamessa's? Did you read that one? Can I read that one?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which one it was now, but I remember thinking that was a pretty far out one.
Okay, can I read it? I was with him. This is Joe Cantamessa. He's a long time other Zoomer guy out there. We love. I was with my ex-wife for 7 amazing years. We got married in November 2018. At the end of 2019, I got home from work one day and my house was empty and her wedding rings were on the table and she was gone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a good one.
That was it. With no contact from her, I received divorce papers weeks later. Oh my God.
That's rough.
Are you kidding? That's like getting sucker punched. After getting in contact with her, I realized that this was my destiny and had to move forward. So when I filled out my portion of the paperwork, she again ghosted and fled New Jersey, so I couldn't finalize the divorce. I got heavy into drinking, psychedelics, and some drugs to cope with my pain. After well over a year of trying to find her, I got in contact with her in November 2020. I refiled for divorce myself and sent her divorce paperwork, in which she surprisingly mailed back to me, and I forwarded it to the court January 2021. Gets better. Mm-hmm. In May 2021, I still have not heard from the court, and they said that they lost my paperwork and I needed to send copies to my wife to re-sign. But then my ex-wife ghosted me yet again. I was devastated. Rewind back to November 2020. That is when I first found Wisdom of the Sages podcast from Joe Rogan, which led me to exploring the Bhakti path. So instead of being devastated and doing drugs and alcohol, now, in my frustration, I meditated, I read books, I did japa, and I listened to 300 plus episodes of Wisdom of the Sages. Stay calm each day. This is beautiful. This is what we need. When we are going through hell, we want to take shelter in so many things except for God. And we are getting pushed as Krishna as our real shelter. Take shelter of the Bhagavatam, take shelter of the devotees, take shelter of the holy name. He did it. He did what the sages were recommending for millennia. He did it right here. So in May 2021, when I thought I wouldn't be divorced, I just prayed. I also decided to go on my first Bhakti-yogi retreat through the Bhakti Center and messaged Raghu on Instagram asking questions about me not fitting in because of my music taste and very agnostic background, in which he gave me lovely advice, which enticed me to sign up for my first retreat, which is going to be June 3rd through the 6th, 2021 in Canaan. I guess it was Super Soul.
That was the digital detox. I did the Bhakti Center, I think.
Oh, okay.
We were in LA.
Oh, we were in LA. Okay. With divorce lingering in my mind, I decided to just live in the now and just enjoy each day. And on May 28th, I received a call from the court after months of them losing my paperwork and my wife being MIA again, saying they found my paperwork and my divorce date would be June 3rd, the same day as the retreat.
Boom.
I was nervous that she wouldn't show up and I would miss my first Bhakti retreat. But again, I just prayed to Krishna and just let my karma or fate or whatever do what it had in store for me. At 9 a.m. on June 3rd, I nervously joined the Zoom call for my divorce. And after not speaking to my ex-wife for months, she was miraculously on the call and our divorce went through as smooth as possible. I was officially divorced by 9:40 a.m. and I was in my car driving to Canaan for my retreat at 10 a.m. I chanted 4 straight hours on my drive up there and was greeted by Doyal and Kishore Chandra, who were leading the retreat. By the first day of the Dharma talks, kirtan and genuine human interaction ruins and conversation, I realized that this was Krishna's guiding me in the right direction because I opened my heart to him. I broke down crying during the kirtan, being in pure bliss and warmed by loving hugs from Doyal. I realized at this point that everything happened because I allowed Krishna to take the wheel instead of using drugs and alcohol to cope. This is beautiful.
This is a miracle.
Much love. Joe Cantamessa, thank you for sharing. There's so many of these beautiful stories. I wish we could share them all. We can't.
I want to read one more honorable mention, though.
Okay, please.
Okay, this one is an anonymous one. All right?
Yep. Oh, the anonymous one is good. You can't win the beads if he's anonymous, but
anonymous
check this one
are
out.
always the juiciest. Hi, Raghu, Kaustubha, and Mara. Firstly, all my love and praise to you for the wisdom, for the wisdom and the love you put out into the world. You helped me onto my path, and I've always wanted to walk, but never knew how. Oh. The expression "dented can" is too mild for me. I could blame childhood trauma on my aggressive working class environment in London, England, for my misdeeds, but I'm a big boy now, and I need to take responsibility for my own actions. All right?
Okay, that's good.
That's good. That's good. I like it already, right? I like this.
I like
attitude.
I like beyond a dented can. I like that.
And taking responsibility, right?
Yeah, beyond dented can is like when you put like a can on a train track and it just like flattens it or
Flattened can.
It's right. It's like it's beyond dented. You can't it feels
Rusted.
like you can't even repair this thing. You can't even tell it's a can.
You need some real dented can repair yoga for that. Okay. So he says, the 2 Krishna miracles I have both involve bad choices and Krishna showing up to gently and beautifully guide me back to him. Okay? My wife and I had been married for 6 years and trying to conceive for 4. The stress of the situation caused us to separate for a year and put a huge strain on our sex life. While separated, I fell in love with a beautiful spiritual woman who seemed to me to be my soulmate. Although nothing became of this, I kept that feeling of love as a guide to where I needed to aim to, the feeling I needed to cultivate. But much sadness still remained in me for what I sometimes perceived as a failed opportunity. Part of the reason this didn't progress to anything was that when my wife and I met to discuss a divorce, it became clear the damage our separation had caused her, and I couldn't hurt her anymore. We went to marriage counseling and managed to patch things up. 2 years on, still no baby, and so the cycle of stress began again and intensified with my wife concerned about her biological clock. Now to the Krishna miracles. I'm ashamed and embarrassed to admit that in February I seeked out a prostitute. The situation had beaten me. I wanted to feel sexual gratification without pressure. This didn't happen, but what did happen was that this lady offered me wisdom and held me like a baby while I told her my problems.
The prostitute?
The prostitute.
The prostitute held her like a baby.
held him like a baby,
held him like a baby. You know,
and shared wisdom with him.
Prostitutes for like a lot of times we sexualize our fear, our anger, our depression. It's got nothing to do with the sex impulse. Sex often doesn't have anything to do with sex. It's got to do with every other emotion but sex.
Right. So this prostitute shares wisdom with him. At this point, I should note that I'm an other.
Who is this wise prostitute?
Seek her out. Wise prostitute, if you are listening, props to you. Okay. So he said, at this point, I should know.
Here's a coupon code for the wise prostitute.
All right. Okay. At this point, I should note that I am an other, and I always listen one day behind on the podcast.
Okay.
Right? Some others are like that. On my journey home from the shameful visit, I see the title of the Wisdom of the Sages episode, On Prostitutes. Right? That was a she did on prostitutes.
We did a whole episode on prostitutes?
Don't you remember? Because when Krishna enters into Dwarka, the prostitutes greet him. And we talked about the prostitutes. And we told the story about Chintamani, the prostitute who
inspired
wisdom.
The wise prostitute, Chintamani.
Yeah. And Prabhupada wrote that great commentary where he talks about prostitutes. And he says how there are many great devotees that to this day in India that are prostitutes. And just by some trick of chance, they've ended up in this situation.
Yeah.
Right?
It was beautiful.
So he said, so he listens to the podcast one day behind, and on his journey home from that visit to the prostitute, he turned on Wisdom of the Sages, and the episode was the one entitled On Prostitutes. Maybe you could find what episode that is, Mara. Could you check that first? He said, I listened and cried most of the way through as I couldn't believe that I was hearing of how a prostitute offered great wisdom to focus the attention and lust for her towards Krishna, the exact lesson I needed to hear. That is a Krishna miracle.
Krishna miracle.
He says, since then, your reminders and lessons on lust have helped me immensely. And again, I'm forever in your debt and here to serve you however I can. The second miracle was a month ago. I have two good friends who are intelligent, loving, fun, and funny men, but our friendship has always been based around pubs and alcohol. Since COVID, we haven't met. So when the pubs reopened, we met in a town equidistant from us. I booked a pub I've never heard of in an unfamiliar town. So he's just booking a pub because it's kind of equidistant to all three of them in a town that he's never been to, never even heard of, or the pub he's never heard of, in an unfamiliar town. I arrived early and saw directly opposite the pub an interesting shop called Tulsi, right?
Oh, Tulasi Mala.
Yeah, I'm tying into our whole thing here, right? He said, with time to kill, I went into the shop to see books by Srila Prabhupada everywhere.
Don't tell me Gauranga Singha was working at the shop.
Gauranga Singha was working in that shop.
Doing hip-hop.
He said, I got to talking to the owner who told me it was a Hare Krishna shop and that he was a fan of Wisdom of the Sages. Of all the pubs in all the towns, right? In all the gin joints, in all, what is it, right? He said, of all the towns and all the pubs, in all the towns to book, one opposite of a Hare Krishna shop seemed to me like divine intervention. I went on to drink alcohol with friends and get a kidney infection. I explained to the shop owner that I'm experiencing polarities of getting closer to Krishna with chanting rounds, doing his meditation, reading spiritual texts, and listening to Wisdom of the Sages on the one hand, and on the other, the call of Maya to indulge in self-sabotage with the lovely, gentle Bhakta, the devotee who worked in that shop, told me that I'm on the precipice of a breakthrough and I need satsang, I need good association. He said, I hope you guys can offer me some further instructions and guidance and forgive my misdeeds. I have always been a seeker, but never been confident enough to commit to fully immerse spiritual life through fear of what my friends and family would think, because it would be so alien to them. It's hard for a lot of people, right? It's like, it's going to be so weird to my family. I know I want to live a better life, and that you describe regularly, and I pray that soon I will be a better man to serve those around me and find a community of pure devotees to serve. Sorry for the length of this message. Please edit as you see fit. Gratitude and love. Hare Krishna, Anonymous. That's such a miracle. Two Krishna miracles. We're out of time. We got to read the winners.
I mean, I had this crazy Krishna miracle I wanted to share. Can we go 10 minutes? Can we go 5 minutes?
Yeah,
over?
let's go over. We're going over it.
I'm gonna tell one. It's incredibly humiliating. Do you mind if I share a humiliating one?
As long as it's not the Calcutta book for one.
No, not that humiliating.
Okay.
Okay, this is very humiliating, and it was at a time when I was in. It was 20 years ago. We just mentioned that time where I was in a lot of Maya. This is a time I was in like big Maya, big Maya, and I went through a period, a couple of years, where I just lost my connection with God, and I can't remember what I was doing. I was in London, and I went to a nightclub because our band, this was later in the band after I become a brahmachari. I was trying to, I just sort of like fell off my spiritual path.
You saw that Haircut 100 was playing in London?
No, it was. And so anyway, when I had a day off in London, I went to some nightclub, and they were playing my band at the nightclub. They were playing Shelter in the nightclub, which was like weird because it was reminding me of my spiritual path. And then there was just some random woman who just started recognizing me and come on to me and being incredibly like touchy with me. And I was just sitting there like sort of paralyzed and like completely lost. And this girl grabbed me by the hand and she said, "I want you to come home with me." And I got up and I walked out the club with this woman.
Okay.
And I was like, where are you going with this, Raghunath?
All right.
Listen here. I walked to this club and I'm walking down the street, and the whole time I was just like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? This is so pathetic and sad. I just heard my band who inspired so many people on a spiritual path, and now I'm going home with some woman I don't even know. Is against everything I believe. And I walked past the street where the Soho Temple was. The Soho Temple is in, and I walked past that street and I go, oh my God, I've been to Mangalartik at this temple. And I looked at my watch and it was time for Mangalartik. And the girl was
Which is like 4 a.m. or something?
Yeah, it was like 4 a.m. It was 4 a.m. And so the girl was incredibly aggressive, like, sexually aggressive. Mm-hmm. And I said, can you hold on 1 second? And I put my hand in my pocket. I pulled out a quid, like a coin.
Quid.
A quid.
Night? You pulled out a quid, did you?
I pulled out a pound. And I said, heads, I go to Mangalartik. Tails, I go with this girl. I flipped the coin and it went right to heads. And I said, I'm sorry, I have to leave. And she goes, what are you talking about? I go, there's no time to explain. And I went to Mangalartik instead.
You should have brought her. Girl, if you're listening out there, it's not too late.
Oh my God, what a story. I don't think I've ever told anybody that story.
No, I never heard that one before. You got to break that one out, the satsangs every now and then.
Okay, let's go to our winners.
Okay.
My vote is for Kateri. Now, by the way, there's many, many winners.
Yeah.
I vote for
they're
Kateri.
all winners.
You're all winners with Krishna miracles.
They're all winners.
Okay. Why don't you do yours first, and then I'll do mine. Kateri's is pretty short but good, and you do the winner right now.
Okay. Out of all the Krishna miracles, I love them all, but this is the one I picked. I thought this was pretty far. This is a double miracle.
Okay.
And this is coming from Vin Vinodia. Vin Vinodia is a great guy. He's one of those essential workers, and works in the hospitals, and great soul. So he writes, "Good afternoon, Haribol, pranams to you all, and thank you for all that you do. I'd like to share 2 Krishna miracles, and I hope it's not too late. Number 1, about 3 years ago, I lost a very, very close friend who died in a car accident in Govardhan while they were visiting on Kartik. So this was a person on pilgrimage in Vrindavan, and they got in a horrible car accident. They were killed instantly, right? I remember that time.
We remember that.
I don't know if I ever met this girl personally. I was probably, in the same room with her many times. And I know a lot of people really love this girl. She was
a young lady. She was Indian, but from Australia, I think.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, Mallory was like with her, I think.
Really?
When we were in, it was right after we left, and Mallory stayed on that trip.
This I think this girl is a disciple of Indradyumna Swami, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he says, about 3 years ago, I lost a very, very close friend who died in a car accident in Govardhan while they were visiting for Kartik. My friend was very close with Radharamana in Vrindavan. So Radharamana is a deity in an ancient temple, very important, beautiful deity of Krishna in Vrindavan, and had actually just written a letter to Radharamana. So she wrote a letter to
the
God
deity. She wrote a letter to God.
Yes.
Okay.
About how they were ready to fully give their life to him. So just before she died, she said, me and my friend are ready to give our lives to you, like fully. We had experienced a lot together in life, some good, some really good, some bad. This friend was very close to one of the Babajis at the Radharamana temple, and they had made me promise that I would meet this person with them. So there's Babaji means there's like an old kind of holy man that lived at that temple.
Sure.
And so she was always saying, I need to introduce you to this man. Okay. Now that my friend had passed, I decided to make an urgent trip to Vrindavan to go to the Radharamana temple to honor my friend and also to visit this Babaji. I traveled to Vrindavan alone for the first time from New York City. It was a trip full of amazing miracles. On the last day, I reached the Radharamana temple. When I got there, I was nervous to see Radharamanji, knowing how special my friend was to him and how he had just taken my friend's soul back to the spiritual world, and how I had hurt this friend in the past. It's interesting. It's what one thing I love about this miracle is he's speaking in the same way that like that Radharamana temple for centuries. It's like a beautiful temple, and it's surrounded by like a little mini village.
Yeah, it's like a little inner courtyard of other families. They live around this temple.
That for generations, going back centuries, have cared for Radharamana in that temple. And when they speak about Radharamana, the deity in the temple of Krishna, they speak just like he's a member of the family. They don't speak about him like, well, there's a temple in the deity. It's like, no, Radharamanji is like, he's right. He's not only their God, he's their friend, he's their family member.
He's a family member.
Yeah, and
so cool.
And so he's speaking like that. Well, I'm going to see Radharamana, but I'm nervous because I know how dear my friend was, and I know sometimes I disappointed my friend. He says, not ever having a true relationship with Radharamana prior to this time, I prayed to him to forgive me for hurting or offending my friend who had passed away, and sincerely asking him, if he so wishes, to allow me to have a relationship with him and to serve him. That was his prayer, right? As I was leaving and going to the samadhis, and the samadhis means there are different tombs to saints of the past within the temple courtyard. He said a Babaji was sitting by the samadhis, and he looked at me and asked my name and what I do and where I was from, and he gave me a big hug and said, I know you. You have finally come to see me. Why have you waited so long to come to see me? Interesting, right?
Very interesting.
And then we both spoke about my friend who passed away, and we cried, and he fed me prasadam. There's no place like Vrindavan in the world, right? Where these things.
This is magic stuff, magic place.
He said, I felt like I knew him my whole life. Anyway, I fly out that evening from Delhi and flew to Baltimore to visit my parents. As I was leaving, I stopped by the ISKCON temple in Baltimore on my way back to New York City. One of the temple devotees approached me about giving a ride to a devotee who needed to go to New Jersey. I initially said no because I was jet-lagged, but then I felt bad and reluctantly said yes, as I knew it would prolong my trip back to New York. But he's that kind of guy, right? He's always going to do the right thing. So he said, okay, I'll drive this person. When I reached New Jersey to drop this devotee off, he asked me to wait 1 second because Krishna wanted me to have something. He said, wait, Krishna wants you to have something, right? I said, no, it's okay. But then he gave me a piece of cloth and said, this is a Maha outfit of the deity and should be worshipped as the paraphernalia of the deity, as good as the deity himself. And remember, I quoted a verse, I think it was on Saturday, but that verse, what is it? Vishnu Aradhananam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam Param. Of all the types of worship, the worship of Vishnu is the highest, but Tasmat Parataram Devi Tadiyanam Samarchanam, that which is related to the deity is even more holy. And so he's saying this outfit, it should be seen as non-different from Radharamana himself. And it should be served as if it's Radharamana, or it should be served as if it's the deity himself, right? And he said, I asked which deity, and he said that the clothing was of Sri Radharamanji in Vrindavan, right? So he had prayed that he could serve Radharamana. And then the person says, this is an outfit from a deity that should be worshipped just as if it's Krishna. He said, what deity? He said, Radharamana in Vrindavan. This was just 2 days after I had made the prayer in Vrindavan. And ever since, I've been worshiping him and offering him this daily. Pretty good miracle, huh?
Krishna miracle, man.
There you go.
Unbelievable stuff. Last one. All right, so that's
a winner.
Prize.
That's one of the winners.
That's one of the winners. We have 2 prizes here. Okay. And here is now. By the way, these are all great Krishna miracles. They all deserve prizes, okay. But we have to pick one. And I thought this was so cool because it was so damn down to earth. This was sent to me by Kateri, who's a regular other and Zoomer. She goes back and forth between those two, and we find out and then she started doing my yoga classes online, and just recently we become even more friends. She's got a house right north of us for 20 minutes away. Just took the kids there and Justin there and went jet skiing and tubing. We took my son out on the tube with a big rubber balloon on his leg. It was great. Anyway, she texted me. She texted me on Easter. And she wrote, I apologize for texting on Easter, but I wanted to share a Krishna miracle. And thank you so much. As I know from listening to the show, you can totally relate, but I lost my dad because I lost my father too. And I miss him so terribly. And I literally just asked him for a sign because he always sends me a sign on special days like today because it was Easter. And he said, send me a sign that you're still there, that you're connected with me. In 2 seconds after I asked for a sign, I had today's show on, and there's my Krishna miracle. There's my sign. My father and my song and what we danced to at my wedding right before he died was Willie Nelson's Angel Flying Too Close to the Ground. Thank you for giving me the sign today. Okay, that was the day. Like, right. I never mentioned Willie Nelson. I told the story about my mother worked for Willie Nelson's manager. And I told this whole crazy story about Willie Nelson, and that was the sign she got. And she was like, oh, my God, give me a sign that you're out there, Dad. And then she turns on the show, and I mentioned Willie Nelson. That was a sign. That's a
miracle.
It's a Krishna miracle and a Willie Nelson miracle, too.
It's a winner. That was a winner.
I want to thank everybody for joining us, listening to my Krishna miracle, our Krishna miracles. I want to thank everybody for sending in their Krishna miracles. And I want to, and I appreciate that we're starting to recognize these miracles that happen in our life all the time. I hope people like this sort of peculiar show today, the Miracle Show. And thanks for our winners. Thanks to Silver Tulsi Mala, tulsimala.com. You can check out their stuff. That was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And tomorrow's Sleeping Saturday, right?
Sleeping Saturday, man. It's interview day. It's interview day. If you got
it's Q&A day.
No, it's questions and answers day. We also had something else we wanted to announce, Mara.
Oh yeah, Lauren Baptiste is doing a summer Ayurveda workshop this Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time for our Patreon members.
Okay, great. Just after our show.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks for writing us. Thanks for staying connected, and thanks for supporting us financially. This is community supported. This is the only way we can do it. So if you're getting something out of the show, throw a monthly contribution down. We really appreciate it. It helps us keep afloat. Patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages. And we're looking forward to Sunday. Don't miss Sunday. Pri Dayananda Das Goswami, Sanskrit scholar from Harvard, but also Swami for 40 plus years and very cool, funny guy. And great soul. So we're looking forward to interview him. If you haven't signed up, Vivi wanted you to know that we have only a few spaces left for Italy. If you're thinking about it, if you're sitting on the Italian fence, get off it. And go to wisdomofthesages.com where events are, and you can sign up there or contact Vivi for more information at WOTSItaly@gmail.com for more information. WOTSItaly@gmail.com. Thanks to everybody. Looking forward to this weekend. Now let's dance. Life's a miracle. Thanks to our winners, Kateri and Vani.